Welcome to the Rocks and Roots podcast, coming at you once again from the luxury of our homes. My name is Tumbles, and with me as always is...
Cranky, and we have a very special episode this evening. Kyle O'Grady from Kyle Hates Hiking on YouTube and the Trail Tales podcast. We had a wonderful conversation with him.
Yes, it's a lot of fun talking to a fellow podcaster too, because he knows all the cues, so it made our job very easy.
So, we're not going to spend a lot of time bullshitting here. We'll just let you listen to this wonderful episode, but we will do our plugs.
Yes.
The Instagram, rocks__roots_pod. I still have to look at the damn thing every time. And the TikTok
is rocks_roots_podcast. And the YouTube. I'm pointing at you.
I don't know. What's the fucking YouTube?
Oh, that was so faily. Okay.
Yep, we're leaving it in though because it's hilarious.
Because we are the most unprofessional podcast on the internet. Okay, we are. If you just type in YouTube Rocks and Roots podcast, you'll find us. And
awesome.
Last but not least,
we have a Patreon floating out around
you
there.
Fucked that one up too.
That's okay. We're leaving all this in. This is hilarious. We have a TikTok,
which I mentioned already.
Oh, what am I missing? This
Apple.
Is the most fucked up, unprofessional, hilarious intro ever. What am I missing?
Apple Podcast.
Oh, Apple Podcast.
Jesus.
Yes. Apple Podcast. Because you can't find Neil Young on Spotify and you can't find us.
Please leave us.
Enjoy the episode, folks.
Yes. Bye. Well, good evening, Mr. O'Grady, Kyle for the friends. How are you this evening?
I am fantastic. I just ate a Domino's pizza to my face.
Oh my gosh, what kind of
and
Domino's?
The whole thing?
It was just a medium, but yeah, it's probably, yeah.
And what are your favorite toppings?
I don't care if this pisses some people off. I did pineapple and ham.
Yes.
Sue me.
All right.
We have gotten the most important questions out of the way.
All right, this has been the Rocks and Roots podcast. Thanks for listening and good night.
Okay, so we are speaking with Kyle O'Grady. Welcome. A very special guest. Kyle is a 2018 Appalachian Trail thru hiker, a Northville to Placid Trail and Foothills Trail thru hiker, an avid White Mountain hiker, and has explored the Adirondacks extensively. He is also a very successful YouTuber and host of the Trail Tales podcast. Welcome, sir.
Thank you guys very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Absolutely. So I'm sure many of our listeners already know who you are, but let's start from the beginning. When and how did you get into hiking? And you also have a very unique trail name. If you could tell the origin story of that, let's start there.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. So I live in the Burlington, Vermont area. I've lived here for just about my whole life. And the way I got into hiking was kind of like a combination of two things. The first thing just being the fact that I live in an area that has like easy access to lots of good hiking. And so I basically just kind of stumbled into it one day when I was in high school. Me and my friends were just like dicking around doing, high school shit. And we were just like, all right, we'll go for a hike. It was just something to do. I didn't really think much of it. And we hiked up Mount Mansfield, which is on the Long Trail here in Vermont. And that's how I because we were on the trail, it was only a couple mile hike, but I saw the signs for the Long Trail and my friends knew a little bit about it, not too much, but one of my friends that I was with, his dad had hiked it. And so they kind of just like briefly explained what it was. And then I went home and I started to look up YouTube videos. And that's the second thing that kind of got me into it. I started looking up YouTube videos about the Long Trail. And then through that, I kind of learned about the Appalachian Trail. I was like, and it just kind of blew me away. Again, I was 15 years old at the time. And something just fascinated me about the fact that people walk for hundreds or thousands of miles on these long distance trails. And very quickly, within a year, I was already planning my own first thru hike, which was a thru hike of the Long Trail, or I should say a thru hike attempt, because it did not go very well. Bailed on day 3, but fortunately on day 2, that's actually when I got my trail name. And this is so long ago now. I was 16 at this time, and me and a buddy rolled into Kid Gore Shelter on the Appalachian Trail / Long Trail in southern Vermont, and my feet were just absolutely torn up. It probably looked like hamburgers or hamburger meat. It was just like disgusting. And I had a lot of blisters, and there's these guys. I hope this is okay to say in your podcast, but there's these guys just like smoking a bunch of weed, honestly. And they were just like, dude, like those are gnarly. Like one guy was like, your trail name should be Nar Nar. And I thought that was so sick. I'm kind of sick of it now, to be honest. But at the time I was like 16, I was like, that is the best trail name ever. And so I took it. I also misspelled it because, again, I was 16 and dumb. So I spelled it Nar. And at this point I've signed way too many like logbooks at shelters with that spelling to go back. So it is what it is.
I remember listening to one of your early episodes of Trail Tales where you're explaining your trail name, and you like, what was it, 2018? You're like, yeah. I'm so done with this stupid trail name.
Well, that was my name for, my entire Appalachian
Oh, of course, you were just finished with the trail.
And that was like right afterwards, probably, that I recorded that episode. So I was very sick of telling people my trail name. It's kind of funny. Another story, I definitely told this on the podcast at some point, so this, you might remember this one, but towards the end of the hike, like very close to the end, maybe like a week or two, not even, I think it was in the 100-mile wilderness, actually. So like probably the last few days, I was with like my friends, and we ran into a new thru hiker that we hadn't met before. And, as per usual, you kind of just, hey, like, what's your trail name or whatever, or just what's your name, like introduce yourself. And all my friends said their trail names. And then when it got to me, I just told them my name was Kyle. And then all my friends just looked at me they're like, what? Like, what the fuck? Like, why are you just tell them your trail name? Like, I was like, all right, I guess I've come this far that I might as well stick it out for a few more days.
That's hilarious.
Well, we're sorry about the trail name.
No, it's okay. It's all good. I actually haven't really talked about it that much on YouTube. It's kind of funny. People comment that a lot. They're like, what's the story behind your trail name? And I don't know. It's, at this point, it's kind of a joke for me. I just like don't tell people. I mean, obviously it's not a secret, but I just like to fuck with people a little bit and keep them wondering.
Well, will you use it for the upcoming secret special trip?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
And it's not going to be a secret by the time this comes out. So
okay.
Speak freely.
All right.
We will get there. We have a question about that.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm assuming on that hike. Well, first of all, I am very jealous that your first hike was Mount Mansfield. That's the only hike that we have done in Vermont. It is an absolutely
we loved that hike
wonderful
so much.
hike.
Are you guys from Massachusetts?
We're from Northern Jersey.
Yeah, we're from Jersey.
Okay.
So it is absolutely no wonder that you fell in love with hiking if that's your first experience.
Yeah, it was sick. It was a beautiful day too.
Yeah, we lucked out when we hiked Mansfield because it was early November, but it was also 65 degrees.
Oh, there you go.
And it was icicles going up, but man, it was great.
Yeah, that's a weird time of year. You can get some funky weather. I it's kind of funny to think, like, if that very first hike I did, if it was like bad weather, like maybe I wouldn't have had fun, and maybe I would have.
Right.
Maybe we would have never been having this conversation right now. I've never thought about that before.
We're glad you had a beautiful day.
There's an alternate timeline out there somewhere.
Or maybe I still would have stumbled across the Syntax 77 video somehow and got inspired.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I know you've talked about this on Trail Tales, but what videos were out there? Because that was early days.
Yeah.
So what videos were out there on YouTube about hiking?
So there wasn't like a ton. This was probably 2011 maybe, but I've been watching YouTube like right from the start. Like I remember when I was like real young, like when YouTube first started, my family just had like a desktop, like a one computer in the whole house, just like up in the office or whatever. And I would wait 5 minutes for it to turn on, and then I would go to YouTube. So I've been watching YouTube like my entire life. And back then, I think, so Syntax was definitely, I still remember, like, he did a video in like the Liebrook Wilderness, I think it was, like way back when. And that's how I found his channel, was because when I was searching for like long trail videos, that like part of his hike was on the long trail or something. And then the only other one I can think of off the top of my head is his channel's called Trekking On. I don't think he makes videos anymore. Tuts 999 was also a name he was going by for a while. And I think it was just those two off the top of my head. There was a few other guys. There's a guy named Frankie, I want to say. But I don't know what happened to him. He was in like Minnesota or some shit. I don't know. This was before like the Darwins and the Dixies of the world. So,
and the Kyle O'Grady's. Okay, yeah, those names, you've refreshed my memory. And when, we listened to your Trail Tale episode, I think you interviewed a couple of those guys.
I interviewed Tuts, and I've interviewed Syntax a couple times.
Yeah, I remember going back and searching out their stuff. So, very cool. I also am very grateful that even though you had blisters and were probably in pain, you still got into it because, once again, that leads you to where we are today. So
that's right.
All right, so let's talk about 2018, the Appalachian Trail through hike. I'm sure you're sick of talking about this.
I've been making videos about it for years now. Ask away.
All right.
Okay, so yeah, if you want to go into detail, you can, or we can keep these short, like 10, 15 seconds each. So favorite state?
Shit, you guys gave me these questions ahead of time, and I'm still...
Yeah, we did.
I think New Hampshire. New Hampshire is my favorite state. It was just cool because I had hiked there a lot, as I think we're going to talk about in a little bit here. I had hiked in the White Mountains quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And so the White Mountains kind of have this, like, reputation among thru hikers. Like, a lot of people speculate about the White Mountains before they get there. Like, oh, it's going to be, like, so hard. And, like, remember one guy said, like, you're going to go through, like, 3 pairs of shoes. And I was like, it's not true. I've literally hiked there. Like, it's, it's hard, yeah, but, like, it's sick. And so... a lot of the people that I was hiking with, were kind of like listening to all this like chatter and all these rumors and stuff. And I was like, guys, don't worry. Like the whites are sick. Like it's hard, but like they're sick. And so when we finally made it to New Hampshire, made it to the whites, it was just really cool to kind of experience it through their lens, I guess, because it almost felt like I was experiencing it again for the first time, just by watching the way that they were reacting and stuff. So I think New Hampshire was probably my favorite state.
Did you have good weather?
For the most part, yeah, actually.
Awesome.
We did. We got pretty lucky with the weather. We took a 0 right in the middle of the whites because we had a bad day. Mm-hmm. And it actually worked out. We were very thankful that, we got pretty good weather.
Did you stay at the hut?
We stayed at the Lake of the Clouds hut. We did a work for stay, which was sick. Because that was like, I think there's one, I don't remember, but that was at the time one of the last huts I hadn't been to yet. And it's also like probably the most famous one out of all of them too. So
it's the closest to Washington, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like right, like a half mile, maybe like a mile from the summit of Mount Washington.
Yep.
Wow. Least favorite state? That was an awesome answer, by the way.
Yeah. I think.
Don't say Pennsylvania.
No, it wasn't. It's not Pennsylvania, actually. It wasn't my favorite state, but it's actually Maine. And let me clarify, because that's probably going to surprise. I saw both your faces there when I said that. So the actual state in terms of like beauty and like the trail is sick. Like, don't get me wrong. Like Maine is definitely one of the most like scenic states. But for me, it was my least favorite, just like based off of my experience, because at that point I was so close to being done. And I was just like, just struggling mentally to like, so basically I actually talked about this in a recent video. From the very beginning of the trail, basically, I was like very intentional about not thinking about how many miles I had left to go. I was like, I'm not going to focus on that. Like, of course I was aware the whole time, but like, I really tried to not focus on that, because I didn't want to get myself like psyched out. Cause at the beginning it was pretty intimidating. And so, I was really good about not thinking about how many miles I had left all the way until I made it to Maine. And then for some reason, as soon as I crossed that border into Maine, I just like couldn't help but like start to think about it. And at that point, I'd hiked almost 2,000 miles. I only had 280 to go. And for some reason, I don't know, the 280 miles still just seemed very intimidating. I never thought about quitting at that point. Like I was definitely like not going to quit. But it was just like, it was kind of a grind, I guess. And being so close to the end, but also still having like 280, like pretty tough miles to hike, was tough. And so, overall, like experience wise, Maine was probably my least favorite state. But as far as like the scenery goes, probably probably Pennsylvania is my least favorite state, but I had more fun in Pennsylvania than Maine, believe it or not.
No, I believe it.
Okay.
I mean, you were also you were going pretty fast as well. So
Relatively, yeah.
I mean, how long did you do the trail in?
I honestly can't remember if it was 140 days or 141 days, but one of those two. May 14th to October 1st, if anyone wants to do the math.
Yeah, I mean, 4.5 months.
Yeah, just over 4.5 months,
yeah.
Which is like, it's definitely a little bit faster than average, but it's also not like it's not unheard of, know. It's not like we're setting any speed records, but it was a little bit faster than average, and I had to hike at that pace if I wanted to finish in time because I started so late.
Right.
It's a very respectable time, though.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It took just about everything I had.
No, I bet. No wonder you were kind of done by the time you got to Maine.
Yeah, which is too bad. Like, I hate saying that, but I don't know. I'll definitely go back and hike Maine again someday.
I was just going to say, it's not going anywhere.
That's right.
All right, so favorite spot or section of the trail?
Ooh.
I know I'm like splitting hairs here, but
oh no, that's a good question. I don't know if I can pick like one specific spot, but one place that really stands out to me was just the section around Harper's Ferry, say a day or two before Harper's Ferry and a couple days after, through Maryland actually.
Yep.
That was like a big turning point in my hike. For some reason, I had like a whole like new attitude walking out of Harper's Ferry. And I think partially just because it's not the actual halfway point, as I'm sure a lot of people know, but people call it the psychological, I'm doing air quotes, halfway point. It's kind of like for all intents and purposes, it's the halfway point of the trail. That's kind of how it's viewed. And so just like making it there felt really good. And also, I think that was the point when I stopped stressing as much about whether or not I was going to A, make it, and B, make it in time. Because like I said, I started so late. So for the first, say, half of the trail, I was like very focused on making sure I was on pace. And I always was. But just about every day I would calculate like my pace and make, how many days I had to make it by like October 15th or whatever. And around Harper's Ferry, I kind of stopped worrying about that as much. I knew I still had to keep a good pace, but at that point I wasn't worried about being able to.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't keeping track of it every single day. And I don't know, that was just kind of a turning point for me. So it also felt good to be out of Virginia as well. So just a bunch of different things kind of in one. I was also hiking by myself a little bit. I'd hiked most of the trail with a guy I met on the very first night named Mullet Mike. And he stayed behind a few days before I got to Harper's Ferry to spend some time with his girlfriend or whatever. And so I was like, I'll keep going. And then I knew I was going to take a zero at some point and we'd catch back up to each other. And so I was kind of by myself and definitely wouldn't want to do the whole thing or even a majority of the thing alone, but it was just kind of a little change of pace. So just basically a lot of different things just kind of combined there. And I was feeling good going through Harper's Ferry.
Awesome. So least favorite spot or section?
We go from the high way down to the low here.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh man, I didn't really have a good time in the Smokies.
Really?
The weather was really shitty, and that's the main reason why, honestly. That was like the first, it's pretty early on in the trail still. I can't even remember. I think it's less than 200 miles in, but that was like the first time I had to deal with like it wasn't even that bad, honestly, in hindsight, but up to that point, it was the worst weather I had. Bad time in the Smokies, and then just Maine. I hate to say it. It sucks, but
it's understandable.
Maine was tough.
Yeah.
So we have this, Tumble is shaking her head. So we have this ongoing thing now with guests, with anyone who has either extensively section hiked the AT or through hiked it. When we did Massachusetts, I loved Mount Race. My hiking partner over there hated it. So our running gag now is whenever we interview a guest, what were your thoughts on Mount Race right after the Massachusetts border?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. That's why I thought that maybe you guys were from Massachusetts.
Oh.
I thought maybe you were like from Western Mass or something.
No, I'd like to block that in my mind.
Specific, like relatively insignificant mountain. I actually didn't even remember what it was when I saw the question, so I looked it up on Google.
God damn it!
And I do remember it now, though. So once I looked on Google, I looked at some pictures and stuff. I do remember it. It was very brief, but I remember I enjoyed it. I remember like the cliffs. I didn't even stop on top, and we just went right over basically. But I just remember being like, "Oh, I didn't expect like this expansive of a view in Massachusetts." And
thank you very much, sir.
Coming from a thru hike, it's like if you're going northbound, at least you don't really get. That was actually one of the first expansive views I'd had in a long time too.
I bet, yeah.
And also just crossing the Mass that day, so like, yeah, it was a good time. Not race, good times.
So the official score is 2-1 in your favor, Tumbles.
What's not to like about it? It was cool. I mean, again, it's not like the most like amazing thing in the world, but I don't see why anyone
you know
could
what,
not
Kyle?
like it.
It was a very, very hot day when we did it. That
makes it tough.
90-something.
It was 90-something degrees, and it was also later in the day, so we had worked a whole day. At least I worked a whole day, and then we went up and hiked. So
it wasn't so much the mountain that you didn't like; it was the experience.
It was the experience, yes.
So it's kind of like me in Maine too.
Yes.
Like Maine's amazing. Like it's such a beautiful state, objectively speaking, and beautiful section of the Appalachian Trail, but I just didn't have a good experience there.
Yes, I guess we have to do it again, Cranky, so
That's
I
right.
can enjoy it.
So as we're going up this thing, I am as
he
happy
is
as
euphoric. Look
shit.
at those sights.
Smiling, like, look at this expanse.
That's why we call him Cranky.
Tumbles are just miserable. So it was, for you, it was one of those days, why do we do this? Why do we torture ourselves? And for me, it was one of the best sections that we had done. So
what a contrast,
isn't it?
Yes.
We're like yin and yang on here.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much. You so far are the only guest that has had my back on that. Everyone else
I got you.
Not enjoyed it. All right, moving on.
Uh-huh.
As a New England native, you've explored a lot of the whites. What is your favorite hike or summit in the whites? And if you have any interesting stories, what do you got?
Yeah, so I hiked the 4,000 footers over the course of a number of years, starting in like 2013, and then I finished in 2017. And then ever since I finished those, I've still gone back to the whites quite a bit, but I don't want to say always, but I try not to just focus on the 4,000 footers there because, and understandably so, but a lot of people get drawn in on that. And again, like I get it, like you want to hike like the list, like I literally did that, like I was that person, so like there's nothing wrong with that, but there's so much else out there in the whites, it's literally crazy. Like there's thousands of miles of trails there, or maybe that's an exaggeration. There's definitely over 1,000 miles of trails there, and
I think the red line is thousands of miles.
Yeah, it's like super long, and like there's so much there that you don't get to see if you only focus on the 4,000 footers. So I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but my answer was going to be not one of the 4,000 footers. I'm actually pulling up Google Maps right now to try to find one, because I've hiked like, let's see, what's a good one that we did in the past couple of years? The Dry River. Is that what it? The Dry River Trail, I think it was. Sorry, guys, I'm trying to find it here. I can't find it, but
That's quite all right.
I want to make sure I get that right, because it was the Dry River Trail, which was crazy. Flossie and I did that in 2020, and I will say, don't just go hike this trail if you're not like experienced, because again, it's been a few years now, but it was like very washed out from, I don't even know what. The trail kind of follows like a pretty big river. I think it's the Dry River, and like the river just washed out like a good portion of the trail. So we were literally just like hiking in the riverbed, like trying to look for like rock cairns to see where we were going. And under certain circumstances that could have been really annoying, but we thought it was like a very like fun kind of change of pace. We didn't really have that many miles to hike that day anyway, evidently, because otherwise it would have been really annoying, but that was pretty cool. So the Dry River Trail, and just honestly, just I shouldn't say any, but there's so many of these, I call them like lesser known trails, like wilderness trails in the White Mountain National Forest. Like you can tell when you go on these trails that like not that many people hike on them. The tread is like very thin. They're kind of overgrown in some spots, and it's just like a completely different vibe from a lot of the 4,000 footers that get so much traffic. So I would say just about any trail like that. I guess the only other thing I'll say is I just want to be clear, like don't go and hike this kind of stuff if you're not experienced, because you can get pretty far out there. So, it's definitely not something you want to do on your first time. But they're sick.
Well, I mean,
So
that's good to know. I know you to go a little bit west. I know you did the Northville to Placid Trail. Was that kind of a similar situation where it's not very much used, or is it? And the extent of experience you need to hike it.
Yeah, it's more trafficked than, actually it depends on the section because it's 140 miles long, but generally speaking, it's the Northville Pass Trail is more trafficked than like some of these trails in the Whites I'm talking about, but it's not at the level of like the Appalachian Trail or the Long Trail or something like that, or any of the 4,000 footers. It's kind of in the middle. The Northville Pass Trail I would not recommend as a first time through hike, although it does have some things that would make it good. So I should let's send in some mixed signals here, but it's a very flat trail, which would be good for a first time through hike. I actually know a couple of people who did it as a first time through hike, but they had hiked quite a bit, just like day hikes and stuff before. So it's not like they were inexperienced hikers. Actually, okay, if you're an experienced hiker but you haven't through hiked, I would say the Northville Pass Trail would be a good first through hike. If you have never hiked before or maybe never backpacked before, I'm sure people have done it as a first one. I'm positive of that, but I probably wouldn't recommend it as much, just because there are some pretty remote sections of it, and it's also just a tough trail. Like mentally, it's a very tough trail. It's a lot harder having hiked it successfully once and failed it, but still hiked most of it another time. I could say pretty confidently it's a tough trail mentally, very challenging.
And what makes it so? Yeah.
Well, it's very rough, first of all. So it's not steep. You're not really climbing at all, basically. So like you might think, oh, like it's going to be easy, like it's flat, but a lot of the trail is very rough. There's a couple spots that are like, actually one spot in particular I can think of that is basically a beaver pond you're walking through. It's very, I don't know, it just feels kind of lonely. Like, so even on other trails that are remote, a lot of the time you get to a top of a mountain and you get this huge expansive view, but the NPT is so low and so flat that, I'm not going to say it's not pretty, because it definitely is. Like, there's a lot of rivers and ponds and lakes and stuff like that, but there's no expansive mountain views. And so you just feel like, yeah, it is definitely very monotonous. And I've like talked a lot of shit about this trail on Trail Tales, but I don't know. It definitely feels kind of lonely. It definitely feels kind of monotonous. And like, it's long enough that, it's not just a quick little hike you can do. But of course it's not that long, but I don't know. It's just like, it's always kind of hard to verbalize this. It's just a tough trail. And I would just say that's like my own opinion, but I've heard other people say this too. Like Flossie agrees. And then I remember I had another guest on Trail Tales way back when that hiked it, and he agreed too. Like, I don't know. It's just, it seems like it's easy on paper, but it's not. It's a tough trail.
Is that also possibly because it is so flat? We were just talking to another guest who was saying that elevation changes are actually sometimes easier. If you are hiking flat, you're using those same muscles over and over again, and it actually could lead to more injury than, elevation changes. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's definitely, I think that's true. I got a whole nother story about that on a different trail, although very similar to the NPT. But actually, just another thing I meant to say there about the NPT being difficult too is the Adirondacks have some pretty gnarly weather. Like, it's very wet there. So it rains a lot. It's also pretty cold there. And then bugs are a huge issue there. So, lots of places have bug issues, but the Adirondacks are super buggy. And it doesn't help that this trail, again, is a low, very wet trail. Exactly.
So it's a perfect storm of many different little things. Yeah.
And so when we hiked it in September, late September, actually into early October 2020. And our thought was we'll go later so that we'll avoid the bugs, which we did, thankfully. But it was also very cold. And very
I was going to say then you're dealing with other issues.
Yeah, exactly. But we did get some nice foliage. So it was a very difficult hike, but it was also very rewarding.
Okay. So the other trail that you were talking about, where we were talking flat and low and prone to injury, would that be the Cranberry Lake Trail?
You got it. Cranberry Lake 50.
Segues are on fucking point. All right. So you had an experience with that. Was it this past summer?
Yes, it was.
We watched
July
that video.
2021. I actually just watched that video, rewatched it today. That's one of my favorite videos I've ever made, which is funny because it was a terrible hike.
So for those of you that don't know, Kyle found himself injured about 20 miles away from a trailhead on that trail. So basically, we fortunately have never been injured to the point where we were wondering what the hell are we going to do. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so I guess to start, I'll just explain like a little bit what the trail is, because it's not as well known of a trail. It's actually very close geographically to the Northfield Placid Trail. It's, you know, still in the Adirondacks, same area. And it's basically just a 50-mile loop hike, you know, which was great because I actually hiked it. I've hiked it twice now. I hiked it back in 2017 as well. And I always thought it was great because I was like, oh, it's a loop hike, so I can go do it by myself. So I was kind of saving it for when I had some time to go hike, but I couldn't find anybody to go with me because I was like, you know, normally if you want to hike 50 miles, you have to, you know, do a car spot or hitchhike or do something like that. And I was like, this is perfect to loop. So I went out and did it. And most of this trail is pretty remote as well. The first day I started late, like probably wasn't hiking until like 10:30 or 11. And I was still trying to do a big day. I knew it was going to rain soon. And I was like fresh. I was feeling good. It kind of brought me back today when I was rewatching the video. Like I was feeling like very confident going into this hike. I felt like I was in the best shape of my life, and I was in really good shape. But the thing is, I hadn't really been doing too much backpacking, you know, recently up until this point. I'd only done like one other backpacking trip so far that year. And most of my like training, you could say, had been like day hikes and a lot of trail running, actually. Like mostly running was what I was doing. And I was definitely in the best running shape I'd ever been in. So I was like feeling really good, feeling really confident. I was like, I'm not even going to be running on this. I should be able to crush it. And it's also like super flat, like I said. And so I just like hit the ground running on that first day. The late start didn't help. I kind of felt like I was against the clock. And then just after lunch, so a couple hours into my hike, it started to rain. And I knew it was going to rain. I was like prepared for it and stuff. But when it's like downpouring like that, I don't know about you guys, but I really don't like to stop. It's like you can't really stop to take things in when you're, you know, soaking wet like that. It wasn't like that
cold.
Yeah, I actually wasn't that cold, thankfully. That has not been the case on other hikes, like the NPT, for instance, when I was soaking wet and cold. But it was actually a pretty warm day. It was in July, so that was, thank God, honestly. But I just like was hiking super hard, and it also didn't help too. Another thing, it's just the perfect storm. The map I was using at the time, I didn't realize this, but there was a lot of sections of the trail on the map that didn't have mileage, and I actually realized after I got back that they did have the mileage. It was just like on a different part of the map. There was like a number, then you had to go look up the number and find the mileage there. But I didn't realize that when I was out there. So some sections had it, some sections didn't. So I wasn't really gauging how far I was or how far I had gone very well. And so I ended up hiking. I'm still not exactly sure. I might have put it in the video. I can't remember, but it was definitely over 20 miles. And I did it like very, very fast and very aggressively. And towards the end of the day, my right foot was really starting to hurt. I've never had any problems with that foot before. I have had problems with my other foot. And so this really surprised me. I was like, what the hell? Like, I thought this was my good foot. Like, why is this happening? And I basically limped into camp by the end of the day. Fortunately, the pain didn't start until probably the last like 5 miles maybe. But the next morning, woke up, it still hurt really, really badly. And so at this point, like I knew like I could barely put weight on it. I was like, fuck, like normally I've never been in this circumstance before, but what I would advise people to do and what I would have done if I had been able to, I would just say like I should have left the trail. So if there was like an easier way that I could have bailed, I would have done so. And that would have been the smart and prudent thing to do. However, the spot I was at, like I hiked myself so far out there that I was like kind of in the thick of it now. And so I was like, well, I could backtrack 20 miles on my shitty foot and go back to my car. There was a trailhead that was a little bit closer than 20 miles, but it was still at least 10 miles. It might have been further. And that wasn't even where my car was. So I would have had to find a way back from there. And so I was like, I'm 20 miles in. I only got 30 miles left. I had 2 days to do it at that point. I was like, I guess I'll just keep going. And so I did. And I just want to also clarify, this wasn't like a life or death situation, obviously. My foot was in a lot of pain, but I knew I could make it out. I just knew it would be really painful, and it was. So, I just want to be clear about that. It's not like I was, putting my life at risk or anything like that.
Don't need the chopper coming in for you.
Exactly. It wasn't, that bad, but I basically just slogged it out for the next 2 days, and it hurt every single step all the way back until the moment I got to my car. And then to add insult to injury, right after I finished, my car was parked basically in town at the town of Cranberry Lake, and there was a little public beach there. It looked really nice, sand and a nice lawn and shit. And so literally, 2 minutes away from the trailhead. So I went there and I just went to take a quick swim after, kind of relax a little bit, clean up for the ride home. And when I was walking back to my car, I'd taken my shoes off, obviously. I stepped on a bee and I got stung in my foot, which was fine. Honestly, it hurt for a second. Then it was fine after that. I didn't even feel it after that, but I was like, of course, just what I needed. But, anyways, I'm still not sure exactly what happened. I still get questions about this from time to time. What happened? But I don't know for sure what the actual injury was, but I do think the reason it happened was because actually two different reasons. First of all, like I said, I was going too fast, too hard. I still think that I was in shape enough to do the miles that I was trying to do. I just think I needed to do it slower. I needed to take more breaks. I needed to let my feet rest. And actually, this also goes back to what you mentioned a few minutes ago about the fact that this trail's so flat and I was just using the same muscles and the same impacts on the same spots in my feet. I'm sure that did not help as well. So those are the first things. And then the other thing too is I was using shoes that were too big for me, which is really stupid. I had been running in them quite a bit before this, so I thought they were fine. I knew they were too big, but they hadn't given me any issues. And so after this hike, I threw those shoes away and I got a pair of Ultras that actually fit me. Their Ultras run really big apparently, because normally I'm a 10, and that's what I was using on this hike. But I have a 9 now, and they fit perfectly. I have not had any issues since. So
that happened to Cranky too, actually.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened to Flossie too. He didn't get injured or anything, but he also bought 9.5s, I think, and he ended up going down to 9s too and said they fit better.
I normally have to size up, so I'm a 9, but Ultras I normally have to size up to a 9.5. A couple of weeks ago, I bought the Lone Peak, the high tops, because we were going into the Adirondacks, and for whatever reason, the 10.5s fit and worked the best. I don't understand what is going on with their sizing.
Yeah, I don't either. The 9s are perfect for me. Like I said, normally I'm a 10, so I don't know.
So you're the opposite. You have to size down. I have to size.
Yeah, I'm even 10.5 sometimes. It's really, I don't know. It's weird.
Well, they haven't screwed with the women's sizing yet, so I'll let you know if they do.
Okay. But yeah, welcome to the Ultra family, sir. I personally would not be able to hike without them. Please sponsor us.
They're awesome. They're awesome shoes for sure. I'm going to be using them this year. I actually just bought a couple pairs while they were on sale at REI.
Smart move. Now,
we're going to be talking about why.
Yeah.
Question about Cranberry Lake before we move on. Is there also an ultra marathon that goes around Cranberry Lake?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Not that I'm familiar with, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least bit. It would be good for that because it's just a 50-mile loop.
Okay. Something to research.
Yeah.
So I guess the thing to take away from your experience is if something happens, and this has happened to us, don't lose your head. That is the most important thing. Whenever anything happens, just keep your wits about you, because if you can't think straight, you're going to just make the situation worse. And there have been a couple of times where one of us has been injured. That's why we hike as partners. You have another person there who is able to, if you're in shock or whatever, the other person is able to make good decisions for you. But it sounds like you kept your head about you and you got through it. So well done.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it sucked. I was in a lot of pain. I was limping. I basically limped those last 30 miles, and was not fun. And then the worst part too was after that, I knew, I was like, all right, well, I got to let this heal. And so I spent the next month and a half almost without hiking at all in the middle of the summer, which is like the time I like to hike. You know, I'm not much of a winter hiker. So like it killed me to sit there for a month and not hike, but I had to do it.
No running.
No, nothing at all. Just going to the gym. That was it. So, you know, that sucked, but fortunately it paid off because then in September I was able to go do that hike in Colorado and hiked 160 miles and I haven't had any problems, nothing since then. So it worked out. You know, I always try to, I always try to baby my injuries when they happen. If the circumstances allows, at least. If you're on like a long through hike, then it's a little harder to do that. That's something that worries me.
Well, you have something coming up that we'll talk about, and if you're willing, we'll have to have you back on the show to talk about.
Definitely.
Also, you know, when and if you come back on, you're welcome anytime. So it's really up to you. We'll talk about Colorado, but there's a couple of other things that we want to get to. So we'll save those for another appearance if you're willing.
Sure.
Perfect. So let's talk about the YouTube channel.
Kyle hates hiking.
That's it.
Yes.
So, it sucks.
Why did you choose the name?
It was actually my Instagram handle before I had the YouTube channel, and I don't remember. Actually, I think I do. I think I kind of ripped it off some random kid that I went to college with. I don't even know him. I don't even know his name. I just remember I saw him on Instagram, and his handle was like, whatever his name was, hates the outdoors. And so I got that idea. I don't remember when I set my Instagram to that, but it was like well before I started the channel. And then so when I went to start the channel and I was thinking of the names, I was like, all right, I guess I'll just do Kyle Hates Hiking. And I also knew that I was going to be like goofing around a lot and not taking it super seriously as I don't. And so that seemed to just fit as well. And it also, there's a word for this. I can't remember what the word is though. There's some sort of word for like titles that flow kind of like that, like Kyle Hates Hiking, like the KHH, like the double H thing. I can't remember what the word is, but I saw that one time too. And I was like, oh yeah, that kind of fits with what my channel is. So I guess I did that unintentionally. Just kind of has a nice ring to it.
You are correct. And that's going to bug me now for...
Have you heard about that too?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad I explained it well enough that you knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, I know.
Or you're just flattering me, but I'm not sure.
I can't think of... It's not alliteration, but it's
something like that. It's something like that.
There will be an edit in the show notes.
Okay.
I'm Googling it right now.
A very important edit.
It doesn't matter. It's great.
All right. So this is, I guess, not new at this point. To us, it's new because we followed you through Trail Tales, and you used to do both the podcast and the YouTube, and you shifted away from Trail Tales, which we miss. So what prompted you to make the complete shift to YouTube? What's going on with the podcast?
Yeah, so it started off, I did Trail Tales an episode a week, just about, I'd miss a week every here and then, but for the most part, I did an episode a week from November 2019 all the way up until August 2021. And so I actually did, for those that don't know, maybe I did the podcast for a full year before I even started YouTube, and YouTube just grew a lot faster. But that's not even relevant really to what I'm saying. I never really stopped the podcast thinking, okay, the podcast is over. In August of 2021, I was just kind of going through some personal stuff. I had a lot going on, and the podcast, I just kind of missed a couple weeks. I missed a couple episodes, and that had happened before, but I just didn't post more. And so a couple weeks turned into a couple months. And then I started getting the messages and the emails, and it's still many months now. I don't think I've posted since August. And so the truth is I didn't really ever plan on stopping it. And I still don't want to say I'm never going to do it again. But for now, I don't know. I'm so focused on other stuff. And honestly, YouTube is just a little bit more fun for me too, I think.
That's what we figured.
I always really enjoyed the podcast episodes where I was with my friends and we were kind of dicking around and stuff. But I did enjoy the interviews for a long time too, like for sure. But after a while, I got a little bit sick of interviewing people too. I'm not going to lie. And so I thought about like maybe bringing it back where just having like my friends on and stuff. And then I just didn't. So for those that listen to Trail Tales, I'm really sorry. Honestly, like I never intended to stop it. And so if I did, I would have made an announcement and given some closure to people. I guess I could still do that. I probably should. Episode. I think I might post an episode or two before the PCT hike we're going to talk about in a minute here. And then in my head, I'm not going to promise this to people, but in my head, I feel like after the PCT, I might have like a lot more stuff to talk about and a lot more people to talk to that I met out there. And so I think there's like a pretty good chance that I would bring it back then. Again, no promises, but that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't know. It's a little bit of a sore spot for a lot of people. And I feel really bad, honestly. Like I honestly didn't realize like how many people like cared that much about it. Cause like, let's see, on YouTube, you know, I'll get anywhere from 5,000 to 20,000 views a video, depending on how well it does. But on the podcast, it was growing for a while. And then, you know, this past year, it kind of plateaued at around like 2,500 downloads per episode. And I thought like, okay, like that's not that many compared to YouTube. And I didn't realize that like, just because it wasn't getting as many downloads as YouTube was getting views, that doesn't mean that the people didn't care any less. And so, you know, after like a month or two of not posting on Trail Tales, I started to get emails and messages and comments, and I still get them, like I said earlier, like almost every day, being like, bring back Trail Tales, all this stuff. So I feel really bad. I think that maybe the people who listen to the podcast, even though it's a lot less people than watch the videos, I think they might have been like more dedicated, I guess you could say, or more invested in the podcast than maybe people are on YouTube. So it kind of hit them a little harder. So I'm sorry, everybody. I feel bad. I did not handle that well. I'm doing my best. You know, I'm not a professional at this by any stretch of the imagination. So,
well, you're forgiven. We forgive you. So everyone else should too.
I appreciate that. There's also like a lot of other hiking podcasts out there too, which I guess is a stupid argument because there's a lot of other hiking YouTube channels too, but I don't know.
Well, Cranky and I were talking about this actually right before you came on, was that you sound and, well, we didn't see you on the podcast, that's for sure, but you sound and look so natural on YouTube. It was almost kind of like, yes, the podcast was great, and hopefully you'll come back and it'll be great again, but you seem to enjoy YouTube more. Your creativeness comes out a little bit more. Your thumbnails are hilarious. Your episodes are hilarious, your videos. And to go along with that, you also get more community engagement with YouTube.
Oh, for sure.
Now,
for sure.
Reading these comments, do you enjoy watching people lose their shit as much as we do?
I would say I enjoy it. You know, I've never would take pleasure from upsetting somebody.
Of course not. No.
But it also doesn't really get to me either. Like, it doesn't really bother me because you know, for the most part, maybe there's a few things I've said in older videos that I don't necessarily still think, but for the most part, I'd say 95% of what I've ever said in a video is what I believe to be true based on my experiences. So if someone doesn't agree, that's fine. But if it pisses them off, then I don't care.
No, we love that shit. Like, even though you didn't go after REI, the thumbnail was hilarious. And just there are people who are REI freaks, and if you say anything slightly critical, and all as you said was maybe you don't want to buy tents there, maybe you don't want to buy backpacks, and the comments absolutely crazy.
Oh yeah, any of my most popular, most viewed videos are always the ones that have the craziest comments. First of all, because they just reach more people,
right? But
I think what happens is there's another one I posted 2 years ago now. It's my most viewed video. It's I gotta find it here. 5 backpacking gear lies I believed as a beginner. And what happened with that one is the thumbnail is me pointing to a Nalgene bottle and it says like crap.
Yes.
And so like for some reason like people really like were clicking on that video a lot. Like the thumbnail was good, I guess. Like it was drawing people in, and then people would watch it and they would think it was stupid. And so they would comment on it, like saying it was bullshit. And then YouTube was like, okay, well, I guess people are commenting on this a lot. So they start putting it out to more and more people. So then more and more people start commenting. And so it's kind of funny. Like most of my like most viewed videos have a lot of like bad comments. And this actually, that one in particular, or no. It's the first one I did about REI where I'm just like in the thumbnail, I'm kind of shitting on REI. That video has almost 50% dislikes. Like the like to dislike ratio is like 50-50,
that's awesome.
Which is pretty crazy. And then the other one I was talking about there, the backpacking gear lies, the one with the Nalgene bottle in the thumbnail, that one's pretty close to 50-50 as well. But no. I don't care, man. I don't care.
We love that hilarious shit. And you're going after people's sacred cows. Like people in this community latch on to certain things. And, well, it's the same, I guess, with anything. And they elevate it to this status that's kind of like Nalgene or REI or...
Exactly.
We hopefully don't do this with ultras, but we really love ultras. Yeah, maybe we do.
Well, what I was laughing about is that when you started Trail Tales, you were like, someone please give me a shitty comment. I want to read it. And now you're getting tons.
Yeah, on YouTube. I never got that many about the podcast though, because
it was good. Really good.
I've said this before. Like, no, it's not because everybody likes the podcast. It's because on YouTube, there's a comment section right in front of your face. Yep. So if you have something negative to say, most of the people who write, shitty comments on YouTube, they're not like putting too much thought into it. They're not sitting there like, all right, I got to really think this through. Like, they're not doing that. They're just writing some bullshit and they're moving on and forgetting about it. And so they're lazy. And so with the podcast, I was asking people like, hey, like talk some shit to me. If you don't like this podcast, like send me an email, send me a message on Instagram. And people who have negative things to say, generally speaking, can't be bothered to even take the 2 seconds to type in someone's email address.
Right.
And so I think that's why I never really got any bad comments about the podcast. Not because people didn't like it. I'm sure there's plenty of people that listen to it and were like, this idiot says fuck every 5 seconds. I don't want to hear this. But they just couldn't be bothered to send me to go the extra effort to actually send me a message versus just typing something in a comment section right in front of their face on YouTube.
We can identify with this. We're watching our numbers grow week by week. Thank you, everyone, by the way. But no comments. Like every once in a while, we'll get another review, but the numbers are going up, and it's the same thing that you're saying. Like. On YouTube, the comment section is right there. To comment on a podcast, you have to send someone an email. So, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head.
For sure. And people can leave bad reviews, which I definitely got some of those. But even that wasn't nearly as frequent as the bad comments on YouTube, that's for sure.
So, I don't know about you, Tumbles, but I'm definitely identifying with what you said about interviewing people. We were talking earlier this week. We have a couple episodes stacked, and I think I'm going to enjoy not having to interview someone every week because we've got a couple episodes stacked. It's going to be nice to take a break. So I totally get where you're coming from, where interviewing someone every week gets a little monotonous. Not that we don't enjoy our guests. We love you all. And we love all our listeners. Please keep listening. But did you ever have a bad experience with a guest? We've had, I'm not going to name any names, but an interesting one, and then one that maybe will require a lot of editing to put together. Did you ever have a difficult guest, either a negative experience or just someone who wouldn't talk or couldn't talk, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, so actually... there's only been like a couple times. There's only been one time specifically I can think of where a guest said some shit that I was like, yo, like, come on. But I have had a few where they weren't talking as much as I would have wanted. And so actually what I did, and I did this right from the start too. I don't even know how I had the foresight to do this before I knew what I was doing, but Before every episode, I would always like kind of chat for a few minutes with the guest to kind of get them warmed up, and I would always run through like a list of things, and a couple of the things that I would say would actually, I'm kind of going off topic here a little bit, but I would just say like, you know, feel free to talk as much as you want. I would like make it very explicit right from the beginning. Like, do not feel like you are constrained to the question that I'm asking you. Do not feel like you have to give me a direct answer. I was like, talk as much as you want or as much as you can. I would also like just tell them other things like, you know, anything goes, but please don't talk about politics and drugs. Those are like my two ones I never wanted people to talk about. But, you know, I would make it very clear from the start. I was like, you know, this is a long form podcast. Like, you do not have to, because, you know, it's understandable, like, especially someone who's maybe never been on a podcast before. If you ask them a question, they might think like, oh, I should just give like a direct answer. Which is, you know, it's a very reasonable thing to think.
You need to continue the conversation as you roll.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's only been a couple times where I interviewed someone where I like really had to like kind of work it out of them. I would say it was actually more common in my experience to have people who would just talk, like, I don't want to say too much, but talk so much that I would have to like fight to get another question in there. Like I would have to fight to like reclaim back, you know, the conversation. I found that was much more common than people who like were not talking enough, but that did happen a couple times, and I had to think very quickly to come up with more questions and things like that. So it's not easy. I think a lot of people think like, I don't know if a lot of people think this, but a lot of people probably just don't think about what it takes to interview somebody. It's not easy. And you guys are doing a great job, by the way. Like, I know like it's not easy at all. So,
thanks.
So hats off to you and to anyone who even tries this. Like it's harder than when I first started it. I knew it was going to be hard. I don't want to say I thought it was going to be easy, but you know, it took a lot of practice. I would always like write out questions beforehand. I probably did that for my first like 50 or 60 episodes before I finally felt comfortable not having a list of questions. And eventually I got pretty good at just like doing it off the top of my head. I would usually have an idea of what we were going to talk about, you know, but I eventually stopped taking notes. Maybe it was out of laziness too, but I don't know. It seemed to work out okay.
Yeah, we think so.
And if I'm not mistaken, you started the podcast kind of as a way when you were done with your AT thru hike to kind of keep in touch with people, maybe to ward off some post-trail depression. I don't know where I was going with this question. I was a perfect setup, and then I completely bombed. I don't know. Do what you want.
So I guess Kyle's nice thing he just said to us is now going down the shitter.
No, come on. You know how many times I ask? Okay, that's actually another thing. Going back to what I was saying about, you have to leave this in now because going back to what I was saying about the things I would tell people before we started recording. Another thing I would always tell them is sometimes I ask questions and I lose my train of thought, or I need to pause for a second or whatever. And if that happens, just bear with me. And so Cranky, I know exactly what it feels like to do what you just did, and it's all good. But anyways, I can kind of like riff off of that a little bit. Just going back to like when I first started Trail Tales, basically everything you said there is correct. Like I started it right after my thru hike. And I had the idea for the podcast very early on in my thru hike too. I want to say I was in like Southern Virginia when I first got the idea. And so that was, you know, only about a month into my thru hike maybe. And I just kind of stuck with it. I had a lot of time to think about it while I was out there. And I didn't really tell too many people until the end. I was like, hey, like I'm thinking about doing this. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever, dude. And then a few weeks later, they got a, you know, a text message or whatever, like, hey, come on my podcast. So it was definitely a way to stay connected to the trail community. It was also just a good way to talk about what I had just experienced. This is another reason why I see myself bringing the podcast back after the PCT, because, you know, I have hiker friends, but the majority of my friends here in Vermont aren't hikers, and, you know, they're not going to want to hear me talk their ears off for hours about this fucking Appalachian Trail thing, right? So I was like, I can't do that to them. And so I was like, but a podcast sounds like a good way that I could do that and also provide some value to people. And I'd also just been interested in content creation for my whole life. Like I said, I've been watching YouTube since basically it started. Maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but very early on. And so I always knew that I wanted to make content in the back of my head. I actually had a YouTube channel when I was in middle school, and it was awful. But
making me feel old, man.
That was like that was like my first, like, I don't even know, experience with content. Like, me and my friends would just make these awful sketch comedy videos. That's like what was popular at the time, like Smosh and stuff like that. And so ever since then, I did it for like a year or two. I never picked up any traction, obviously, because I was fucking 12 years old. But, you know, ever since then, like, I always had the idea in my head. Like I knew I wanted to do it. And then I never actually got the balls to start creating until I did the AT. And then it just kind of spiraled from there.
Well, yeah. IB Tat was actually very impressed with you when we had him on. We were talking about where is Trail Tales, because he said he was waiting for your text.
Oh my God, are you serious?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh no, I haven't even talked to him. It's like since our last episode. Oh my God, I feel so much.
Not to make you feel bad, but he was like, "Yeah, I was waiting for his text because I just finished Continental. I'm a Triple Crowner now. I was waiting for him to like call me." But he said he was very impressed because you met him on the AT, and he was like, "Yeah, just this kid said he was going to start a podcast, whatever." But then he actually did it, so he was very impressed.
Oh my God, I forgot that I told him that. I literally completely forgot that we had. I mean, I remember meeting him and talking to him and stuff, but I don't even remember telling him that I was gonna start the podcast. I do remember I was picking his brain a little bit about YouTube. But I can't believe I told him that I was going to start a podcast. That's hilarious. I can't believe he remembers I told him. That's awesome.
Well, when you're done with the PCT and he's done with his Scottish trail, you have to do an episode now.
Yeah. I feel so bad now. That's crazy. IB Tat's the man. IB Tat he's the most underrated hiking YouTuber by far. It's not even close. Like his I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but his CDT videos and all his videos, but especially the CDT ones, like, so good. Like, he's hiking such a difficult trail. He's filming it and editing it all by himself. And not only that, but his videos are like pretty like difficult edits. A lot of people, when they do their thru hike vlogs and they edit on trail, they're very basic edits. They just film them on their phone. There's not too much like B-roll. It's a lot of just like selfie shots. And, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you're on a thru hike. Like, it's going to be tough to do anything more than that. Like, I totally get that. But he had like multiple camera lenses. He had a drone.
Yeah.
He was adding music and like cutting to the music and like doing all these like, slightly more advanced editing techniques and like all this stuff. And he's doing it all in the middle of such a difficult thru hike. I genuinely like have so much respect for that. I don't know how he does it, honestly. I don't think a lot of people realize like how difficult that is. And the fact that like, I think he deserves like way more views. He should be the number one hiking YouTuber, in my opinion. Like it's kind of ridiculous to me that like he has like less subscribers than I do. Like it's criminal, really, is what it is.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, not like significantly less. Like, he still has a lot of people that follow him for sure.
Yeah, he gets like 4,000 a video.
Yeah, he should be getting 400,000 a video. Like, it's like, if anyone listening at this point still hasn't watched IB Tats videos, you got to get on it. Like, I'm telling you, like, from someone who does this, it does videos and hiking videos and stuff. Like, I don't know how he does it. I have so much respect for that. Nobody in the hiking world works harder than IB Tat does.
Yeah, and I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but we've met him 3 times at this point, and he is just the nicest
down-to-earth
individual ever.
Oh, he is, for sure. And, like, when I met him, it was kind of funny. It was, like, a rainy day in Maine, and, like, I had just, like, taken a shit or something. I was, like, just coming back onto the trail, and he, like, shows up, and I hadn't seen his videos too much at that point, but I had seen him on Instagram, so, like, I knew who he was and stuff. And the first thing I said to him, I was like, "Oh, like, I've seen you like on whatever, like your IB Tat or whatever," and like it was probably pretty awkward. And like he was super chill about it. And then we were only together for like a couple days, or we never hiked together, but we just like saw each other a couple times throughout those days. And this is actually so funny that he remembers that conversation. That's awesome.
All right, well, I'm gonna leave our final questions and big announcements to you, Tumbles.
Okay. Well, we did mention it like a few times already in this episode. You are doing the Pacific Crest Trail this year. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts, and when are you hitting the trail?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Again, I'm not sure exactly when this is gonna come out, but as of the time of this recording, the video is going up tomorrow announcing it. That being said, I have alluded to it in quite a few other videos, and I don't think it's going to be a shock for anybody who like closely follows my channel. But we're doing it. I'm nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna try to be like very like humble about this, because that's what I did with the AT. Especially at the beginning, I was like, "This is gonna be fucking hard. Like, I don't know if I can do this." And it's the same thing with this. It's like Flossie and I are gonna be giving it our best shot. That being said, I'm not gonna sit here and say like, "Oh, like we're definitely gonna like hike the whole thing." Like, it's gonna be hard.
So you are doing it with Flossie. That's awesome.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And yeah, it's gonna be hard. Like, I'm trying to be like very humble about it, because I don't want to. I'm also like, I did the AT before I made content, so it was easy to brag about it afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like, there's going to be people watching in real time, so it's like we're going to give it our best shot. I think we have as good of a chance of completing it as anybody. But that being said, you never know what's going to happen out there. We could get injured. The trail could light on fire again.
Yeah.
Unforeseen circumstances. You never know, but we're going to be attempting it, and we're leaving in May.
Okay. Will you be videoing and posting while on trail?
Yes. So we're still finalizing the details. I've been looking for someone to actually edit the videos, and I think I haven't like officially like locked him in yet, but there's been a guy, a former Appalachian Trail thru hiker actually, who I've been talking with, and we've been doing some stuff, and it seems like it's going to be a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping I can kind of lock him down and everything will go well there. And then again, still figuring it out, but I'm thinking probably like a video a week while I'm out there. I'm probably not going to do the daily thing. I think that's just going to be too much. I don't know how people do that, like especially IB Tech, going back to that, like it's fucking crazy. But it's like, yeah, we're thinking one video a week, and it's going to be crazy. I'm like slowly coming to terms with it. We have our permits finalized. Like everything's good. We both got a permit on the same day, which was not easy to do. And so, yeah, we're all in. It's kind of crazy.
Exciting. I mean, you will be hitting the Sierras, and it must, in terms of training, it must not be too terribly difficult with you living in New England and being around snow all the time. So are you doing any training hikes to prepare yourself for the snow and the ice?
I'm not really sure how much snow and ice I'm actually going to hit, to be honest.
Okay.
I need to do more research on this for sure. I am not an expert on PCT trail conditions, just to be clear. I'm hoping that because we're starting so late, it's not going to be like as bad in the Sierra. I know it depends on the snow year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know. That's what 700 miles in. So I'm not sure. Like maybe we will still need like some like snow gear and stuff. But I'm honestly more worried about the desert than I am the Sierra, because like we're starting late and it's going to be hot. And
right.
I'm from Vermont and it's not very hot here. So that's going to be tough. I've never hiked in the desert. Like I don't want to say I'm worried about it, but I'm nervous. I'm nervous for that for sure.
Understandable.
And then as far as the training goes, I kind of got off your question there. I'm definitely going to be doing some training hikes, but I think a lot of my training is also going to be just like, strength training. I already go to the gym quite a bit, and I've actually just the past couple of weeks started to kind of shift my workouts from more like upper body heavy to more legs and cardio. Going to be doing that. Definitely going to be running. I need to get back into that soon, although it's kind of hard to do when it's fucking freezing outside, but Flossie's been doing it, so I need to start getting after it like he is. And then definitely as it warms up and as the snow starts to melt a little bit, mostly just as it warms up, I'll definitely be going out there and doing some more training hikes as well. So planning on, sparing any injuries, which God, I hope that doesn't happen before I even leave. That's another thing I'm really nervous about for the thru hike. It's like, if you get injured, it doesn't matter how bad you want to finish. Like if your body can't finish, then you can't finish. So
careful with that foot.
That would be a bummer. Yeah, I know. But yeah, definitely training a lot. I feel like I'm already in way better shape than I was when I started the AT, and I'm at the point now where if I even just spending one day without doing any sort of exercise at all, I feel terrible. So I can't see that changing, between now and May. So I think we're going to be just about as prepared as anybody, I would hope. And then who knows after that?
I'm sure you two will do just fine.
I hope so.
And you don't need it, but good luck to the both of you.
No, I need it. I will take all the luck I can get.
All right, folks, give them luck, will you?
Yes, please do.
So we have kept you for well over an hour now, and this seems like just a 20-minute conversation. So thank you for making our conversation flow. To end our episode, we did rip you off.
Yes, we say it every episode.
We say it every episode.
Rip you off. Would you like to share a trail tale?
Oh, geez. Yeah. I guess I should, right? I've asked so many people to do it on my show. How could I say no? I might need to think for a second.
That's okay.
Because the other thing, having done so many podcasts and videos by now, I feel like I've told every single story that I have from hiking. And one thing I used to do on Trail Tales is whenever I would have on another content creator who's like talked a lot about their experiences, I would always challenge them. I wouldn't say it was mandatory, but I would always challenge them to try to find a story that they hadn't talked about in a video or something like that.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
So yeah, it's a little pro tip for you guys. You should definitely do that. Let me think. That being said, I'm trying to think of one that I haven't told extensively. There's always the one about the crazy lady in South Carolina at the road crossing.
I'm intrigued. We don't know this one.
Yeah, I made a video on it. It's probably like a month or two ago now.
Oh, you could see we're avid listeners and watchers, right?
No, it's all good. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to rack my brain here. Sorry for keeping you guys.
No, that's okay. This has been amazing.
Yeah, no, this was fun. Fuck.
I guess I should have made that more clear on the outline because the outline just says
all good.
Trail tale.
It's all good.
I assumed you would know what that meant.
Oh, actually, that I saw that. I had no idea what that meant. It looked like an incomplete sentence or something.
Yeah, to tell the crazy lady story because we have not heard it.
Okay, I'll tell that one. So, when I was on the Foothills Trail in South Carolina, it's a 78-mile trail. For those that don't know, it's not a super popular trail, but it's not, unknown or anything either. And I was with my hiking partner Flossie, who I've alluded to a number of times in this episode, and it was our second day. We stopped at a road crossing, and the reason we stopped there was because it had a picnic table at it, and we were like, oh, that'll be like a good spot for lunch. You got a picnic table, it's a nice luxury, right? Fucking everyone loves a good picnic table. And so we get there, we stop, and when I take out my food when I'm backpacking, I basically just kind of spread it all over the table. I'm not very organized. I don't want to say I just dump out the bag, but I got gear and food everywhere basically. And that's going to be relevant in a second here. So we stop, I dump out all my shit. We're eating. We just started eating. And this lady pulled into the into the parking lot there. And this road that we were at, it wasn't like a super popular road, but it was like a state highway. It was paved and it was in the middle of nowhere. And there was this little pull off area with the picnic table and then a little bathroom, just like a little scenic area or whatever. And so this lady pulls in. She's an older lady, probably in her 60s, and she gets out of her car and she was decked head to toe in Clemson apparel, like the college. So bright orange. She looked like she was in a prison jumpsuit basically. She gets out, and we also noticed there was a pretty big dog in her car. And she comes over to us and starts talking. And for the first minute, it was fine. But then pretty quickly, we realized something was off with this lady. Her pupils were very dilated. She was saying shit that just didn't really make any sense. She told us, she was you guys look like millennials. And then she was she was like, I have this like Airbnb, like you guys should come stay at my Airbnb for a month. And we were like, what the fuck? We just started talking to this lady. She's saying all this crazy shit. And then, and up to that point, it was weird, but it wasn't like that sketchy. But then all of a sudden she makes this comment about her dog. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what she said, but she said something like, oh, like if I bring my dog out here, he'd probably like attack you guys. And we were just like, did a double take. We're like, what? Like, what the fuck? And so I look over at Flossie, and like I said, we had just started eating, and he'd already packed up all his stuff. And so that's when it kind of clicked in my head. I was like, oh, that's a good idea. We should get the fuck out of here. This is weird.
Yeah.
And so like I start packing my stuff, but like my stuff's everywhere. So I'm like giving stuff to Flossie. I'm like, put this in. Like we're trying to like, we're still talking to this lady this whole time too. Like we're trying to pack up quickly. She told me, I was like, she said, you look doubtful. I think she was catching on to the fact that like we kind of knew something was up and we were kind of weirded out by this lady. And then she goes back to her car and she gets out the damn dog. And fortunately she put it on a leash, but I was like, not about that. I was like, I didn't say this, but in my head, I was like, get this fucking dog away from me. And fortunately at that point I was basically packed up and we just got the hell out of there, but it was very bizarre.
How strange.
Again, like an old lady, like physically, like not threatening at all, but just like the dog situation and the fact that she was clearly on some sort of drug is just very bizarre. Still to this day, probably the most bizarre person I've ever met. Again, we were on the trail, but we weren't in the woods. We were at a road crossing. So yeah, it was bizarre. I guess the biggest thing I took away from it is, generally speaking, if anything's ever going to happen with another human, it's probably going to be at or near a road crossing. Because for the most part, I don't know what this lady's intentions were. I don't think she had bad intentions. I think she was just off her rocker, to be frank. But generally speaking, if someone has bad intentions, they're probably not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go hike 10 miles into the woods to cause trouble. Like they're not going to do that. They're probably going to be, not always. Unfortunately, there are stories, but
yep.
For the most part, like if you're near a road crossing, that's probably going to increase your chances a little bit of having some sort of trouble like that. So not that people should be like terrified of road crossings or anything, but just something to keep in mind is all.
Okay.
Yeah, very strange. Right. Very strange.
Yeah, and as someone who does not like dogs on trails, that story, yeah.
Honestly, like I was kind of the same way at the time. I'm actually a little bit better with dogs now, but at the time I'd never lived with a dog before. I wasn't like, people are going to hate me for this, but I wasn't like super like a dog person. Like I just hadn't learned yet like how to interact with dogs. I have now, thankfully. I live with a dog now and he's awesome, but at the time, yeah, I was not like super comfortable with other people's dogs either. So yeah, that probably just made it even sketchier.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. I think that is a good place to close it out. We will definitely have you back on. This was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you so much for coming on, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Of course, guys. And I would love to come back on. This is awesome. I love doing these interviews, and you guys are great. You know what you're doing.
Awesome.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, we can't wait to hear about the PCT.
Woohoo!
All right. So, yeah, if you wouldn't mind staying on a minute or two, we will close it out.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys. And thanks for everybody listening as well.
Kyle, before we close out, can you give your socials so people can find you?
Oh, yeah. Duh.
Yeah. On YouTube, if you just type in Kyle Hates Hiking, yeah, my cringy thumbnails should pop right up in your face. On Instagram, it's at Kyle Hates Hiking as well. And I guess, yeah, I think that's... I mean, I could say Trail Tales, but we all know what's going on there, so...
If you want to hear some awesome content, yes, listen to the back episodes, folks, on Apple.
Yes, whatever platform you're listening to this on, you can probably find the podcast. I haven't looked for a while, so hopefully it's not taken down, but I'm sure it's still there. It's on Spotify. I know that still.
All right. Well, folks, this has been such a wonderful episode, and until next time, ciao.